Hello, everybody. Hope you guys had a good weekend. Today we are starting our next unit, and this one is going to be doing perimeter and area, some in the coordinate plane and some out. Okay, so we're going to start by just doing a review of solving equations. So go ahead and solve this equation for x. All right, so like I said, we're going to start with just basic perimeter and area. Okay, so just a refresher on vocab. Perimeter is the distance around a figure, so basically adding up all your sides. And so we're going to work through a couple of examples. So if this is a rectangle and we would need to find the perimeter, we would need to recognize that there are sides of a rectangle that are similar. Excuse me, I don't know why it is doing this, but let's erase this. All right, so there are sides of a rectangle that are the same. So I'm going to zoom in here. And you should recognize that if this side is 12, this side is also 12. If this side is 7, this side is also 7. So we can add up all of the sides. Technically, our formula for a rectangle is 2 times the length plus 2 times the width, or adding them all up. 2 times this would be 24. 2 times this would be 14. So it would be 38 centimeters. Most of what we're going to be doing will have some sort of a unit to it, centimeters, inches, something like that. So you do need to make sure you're paying attention to that as you go through and do it. Okay, here's another example. This is a trapezoid, in case you didn't know. All right, and a trapezoid, again, you're going to add up all of your sides. You should recognize that this is not one of your sides of the trapezoid. That is actually the height. So all we need are these outside pieces to be able to add together to find the perimeter. So we would say the perimeter of this is 6 plus 11 plus 6 plus 13. 6 plus 11 is 17, plus 6 is 23, plus that is 30, excuse me, 36 inches. And again, make sure that you are putting your units on there if they are available. Okay. And then lastly, a triangle. Again, a triangle, we're just going to be adding up our sides. So in this case, we would just add the 3 of them and say that our perimeter is 7 plus 8 plus 16. So 15 plus 16 is 31. Okay, so perimeter hopefully is something that will be fairly simple and straightforward for you. It's just adding everything around. I'm going to have you guys do an example or a practice on this, and then we're going to be moving on to area. So go ahead and find the perimeter of this rectangle. All right, so like I said, we're moving on to area. Remember, all of your answers should be in square units, inches squared, feet squared, centimeters squared, units squared, any of that, because area is talking about two-dimensional space, okay? Perimeter is one-dimensional. Eventually, we'll get into volume, which is three-dimensional. But for what we're talking about right now with area, it is two-dimensional space. Okay, so we're going to start off with a triangle. I highly recommend that you are writing down this formula. You're going to want to start building yourself a formula sheet so that you have access to them as you are going through and doing this. We're actually going to work through 2 different types of area for a triangle because they might look a little bit different. So I'm going to pull up this other screen. We will do this first one first. Okay. Wrong way. All right, so you'll notice that the height comes down and intersects the base of this. So this would be what's considered the height. This would be what's considered the base. And then you would just plug it into your formula of 1/2 base times height. Another way that people like to write it is base times height divided by 2. both of those are the exact same. So if you like to think about dividing something by 2 versus timesing it by a half, it is the same thing. And so you can just decide that on your own. So we're going to take 10 and times it by 9.5, and then we're going to divide it by 2. I'm going to get my calculator. 10 times 9.5 is 95, divided by 2 is 47.5. 47.5 meters squared. This is in regular meters, so now it's in square meters. Okay, and we are going to do the exact same thing with this. Okay, but the difference is that this is the hypotenuse, and we do not need the hypotenuse, which means we have to figure out what this side is, which is the height. So if you ever have a case where it's like that, you guys do know how to use the Pythagorean theorem to be able to find this. Remember, Pythagorean theorem is a squared, I'm going to zoom out a little bit, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So if we were going to do that, we would say 3 squared plus b squared equals 5 squared. 3 squared is 9. 5 squared is 25. We would subtract 9, and b squared equals 16. And if I square root, b is equal to 4. So now I have a base and a height, and I can actually go through and solve. Okay, so remember that for triangles, we do not need a hypotenuse. We need a base and a height. So if you get a hypotenuse, you have to do Pythagorean theorem to find it. So now it's just a matter of 1/2 4 times 3, or 4 times 3 divided by 2. 4 times 3 is 12. A half of that is 6. And so that would be the area of that triangle. So a little bit more steps involved if you end up with a hypotenuse. This one is fairly straightforward as long as you could recognize which parts there are. Okay, so that's triangle. That is triangle for us. Now we're going to move on to a rectangle and a parallelogram. They're both the exact same thing. Okay, they both use the formula base times height. You just have to recognize on a parallelogram that a height is a vertical height. Anytime it uses height, it's talking about one that is perpendicular and comes down at a 90-degree angle. It will never, ever be talking about a slant height. So if you have a slant height, you know that you're not using that number. You're always using the 90-degree angle, okay? So let me pull up this one. We're going to do this one, same as that one. Our formula for this, though, is just base times height. So it's way more straightforward. It is 17 times 15, and 17 times 15 is 255. And again, feet squared. Okay, same thing on this one, base times height. So 10 times 22, so it is going to be 220, and then inches squared. So rectangles, parallelograms, super simple, hopefully very quick for you to be able to figure that out. Okay. Next is a trapezoid. This formula is very specific. If you are writing down formulas, which I'm hoping that you are, I would take a second to write this formula down. It is 1/2 of base 1 plus base 2 times the height. Okay, and so that is super important as you're going through and working on this, that you identify the different parts of a trapezoid. So let me pull this up. Okay, I am going to call this base 1 and base 2, and this is the height. Again, this is not a height. It has to be a perpendicular. It has to be a 90-degree angle. So our formula says 1/2 of base 1 plus base 2 times the height. And then you have to remember back to order of operations that you do things in the parentheses first. So now we would simplify this to be 12.5 in here, because 4.5 plus 8 is 12.5. And now we're going to multiply either this direction and then go there. You could multiply this. And then when you multiply, it doesn't really matter what order you go in. I'm going to take half of 10 and make it 5. And then I am going to times 5 by 12.5. And that gets me 62.5 centimeters squared. Okay, you could have taken this and gotten 125 and divided it by 2. You could have taken half of that. It doesn't matter when you're multiplying, but you do have to do this step of adding first. Okay, adding has to be done first. All right, so last new formula, and this one should be fairly self-explanatory, is a square. And a square, all sides are the same. So that means that when you're doing your formula, it's just side squared. Okay, so if we have this square here that has a side of 7, that technically means that every side is 7 in a square. And our formula just says take that and square it. So that would be 7 squared or 49 feet squared. Okay, simplest formula of all of them is the square. All right, so we've done triangle, we've done parallelogram and rectangle, we've done trapezoid, we've done square. Now you're going to do a practice of each of them on your own. Okay, so here's the first one. I'm going to actually make it a little bit bigger for you. Go ahead and find the area of this triangle. All right, next type of area question is this type of triangle. So go ahead and find the area of this triangle. All right, so now we have a parallelogram. Find the area of this parallelogram. All right, now try this square. Find the area of this square. And lastly, find the area of this trapezoid. Okay, you guys do have an exit ticket. You need to score a 3 out of 4 on it for credit. So when you're done finding the area of this, get started on that.